Talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and blockchain today is a bit like talking about the internet, email and web browsers back in the late 1990s. Lots of people would have heard about it, a few people would have been using it, and very few people would have appreciated the influence it would have on our lives in the coming decades. Just as with the internet, within a few decades we can't imagine what life would be without it, so too with cryptocurrency. In a few decades, most people will know what a blockchain is, and most of the planet will be using one. Which leads me to my question today. Why can't the church be more like Bitcoin? It might be good to ask, in what way are we trying to compare the church with Bitcoin? Lots of people think Bitcoin is pretend money, that it does not really exist. Is the church like Bitcoin in this sense, that the church is about made-up things? Well, Bitcoin is like any other currency. Most of us know that the physical pounds and coins in our pockets are not backed up by gold at the Bank of England anymore. Most of my purchases are made with a card or electronic payment. I never see the actual money, and neither does the person who I'm paying. It's all done by computer, and I can't physically touch it. The currency, whether Bitcoin or British pounds, is just a mechanism that allows real-life transactions of goods and services to occur. Likewise, the church is just a mechanism. It's full of real-life people with stories and testimonies of actual encounters with the divine, real-life answers to prayer, and real and lasting relationships with God and each other. You might also say that Bitcoin is to do with cryptocurrencies and computers, and I don't understand that. It's all above my head. Is the church like this too? With complex rules, chains of command, and theology and ecclesiology and eschatology and lots of other ologies. We probably also don't understand fiscal policy, the difference between M1 and M2 money, or how stagnation will affect the price of a loaf of bread. But we're happy to carry on using the national currency, just like we're happy to carry on attending church without fully understanding everything about it. Just because we don't fully understand something or can't even physically touch it does not mean that it can't have a real impact on our lives. However, this was not what I was thinking about when I posed this question. Why can't the church be more like Bitcoin? You see, the really remarkable and life-changing thing about Bitcoin and the whole of the growing cryptocurrency world is that it's decentralized. These currencies do not belong to a nation or a group of people or an organization. There's no central office. Today, as I write, the market value of Bitcoin is a little under $1 trillion US, around 738 million pounds, and that's a little under half of the total value of all cryptocurrency, and it's completely decentralized. Is all done with maths, hence the crypto part of cryptocurrency. All the transactions of Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies are recorded in public ledgers called blockchains that are secure, irreversible, and immutable. So just like using Google to find information on the internet, you can use your computer to look up the public ledger and see who owns what cryptocurrencies. Except you won't get their names, you will see something akin to a bank account number. Cryptocurrencies also protect your privacy. This kind of decentralized blockchain will affect every part of our lives over the coming decades, in just the same way that the internet has over the last 2 decades. Blockchain technology will decentralize finance, our personal data, information access to the internet, and our supply chains. The power and ownership of these things will end up in the hands of the people rather than a few institutions. For example, it will mean that people in some more corrupt countries than ours will not have to pay sometimes up to 30% in banking fees just to access their salary. There's something very exciting about that, and very scary too. I realise that I have potentially opened up the subject of cryptocurrency and now not going to give you enough information about it. I'm sorry. I'd be happy to talk with you and take any questions in the comments. But let's get back to our main question. Why can't the church be more like Bitcoin? Actually, it already is. In theory, the church, or the Christian faith to be more precise, is already completely decentralised. It's a faith that is open to anyone, wherever they are, whatever your age, ability, nationality, gender, preferences, or ethnicity. It is also a faith that does not need a central office or organisation to exist. You can pray, whoever you are and wherever you are. You can encounter and engage with the divine. You don't need a priest or a special building or special training or experience. The Bible, the Christian scriptures, the written witness to some of the history of how some people have engaged with God and the life of Jesus, is available in more languages and dialects than any other written or audible communication. You don't need any permission or privilege to access it, and your experience of reading it is just as valid as anyone else's. As a child of God, who you are and what you bring is highly valued, but no one is more valued than anyone else. The grace and love of God is so abundant that no one else has more access to it than you or I or anyone else. Over the centuries, we, the church, have allowed structures of power and privilege to be built. Structures that have kept the people in their place, allowed a few to become powerful, and exclude those who do not measure up to the mark. Now we look at the institution of the church, and it's not dissimilar to many other institutions that we have. Institutions that were put in place with all the best will in the world, but have ended up concentrating power and privilege in the hands of the few and leaving most of the people dependent on them. When Jesus was in the temple, the very symbol of religious power and privilege in his time, he was asked for a sign. He said, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." He was not talking about physically rebuilding the temple. He was instead talking about replacing it. The Israelites at the time were always meant to be a blessing to the nations, a light on the hill. Instead, they had built an institution that put the people in their place and excluded others. Jesus' death and resurrection and the releasing of the Spirit of Pentecost was the great decentralising act. Access to God is now available to anyone. No need for a priest, no need for a temple. Why can't the church be more like Bitcoin? On the one hand, Bitcoin is late to the party. In theory, the Christian church has been decentralised since the beginning. On the other hand, the practice of the church has a lot to learn from this new decentralising movement. Of course, there's much about the organisation of the church that is helpful and useful to individuals and society. Lots of our church buildings are open for personal and public spaces of prayer and reflection. Priests and ministers are trained and experienced people who can offer help and guidance as well as insight and education in the practice of faith and life. The church also plays a very helpful and important part in public life, especially at life's moments of joy, at the birth of a child, the celebration of marriage, and the sorrow of death. But when it comes to access to God, to pray for another person or yourself, the chance to show grace instead of hate or anger, the chance to be kind or gentle, the chance to be honest or faithful, the chance to minister to one another and build each other up, the chance to grow in faith and become the better version of ourselves. All that power is in our own hands. Yours and mine and ours together.